Hi, everybody, and welcome to Lovefraud Live. When you realize that you've been betrayed by your sociopathic romantic partner, you just can't wrap your brain around the experience. You say things like, "How could someone who claims to love me be so cruel? And did he ever love me? Was it all a lie? And I never knew people like this existed." I'm Donna Andersen, author of Lovefraud.com, and tonight I'll explain why you feel so shattered by the sociopath's betrayal. At the end of my presentation, I'll answer your questions. To join the chat or ask a question, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. When you first realize that you've been involved with someone who has a serious personality disorder, you may feel like you've lost your bearings in the world, like you're drifting. Sure, you may have had your heart broken before, but no previous relationship affected you this badly. Even if you've managed to get away from that toxic individual, you still feel lost. Your well-meaning friends and family are urging you to get over it, put it behind you, and move on. But you can't. Why? Why is it so difficult to overcome an involvement with a sociopath? Well, I believe it's because we are totally blindsided. We don't know about the sociopaths living among us. They are a giant malevolent skeleton hiding in humanity's closet. No one has ever told us about them. Instead, all our lives, society bombards us with messages such as, "We're all created equal, and we all just want to be loved, and there's good in everyone." We strive to follow the golden rule: treat others the way you want to be treated. We believe that if we're good to people, they'll be good to us in return. Well, as much as we would like these statements to be universal truths, they are not. But no cultural institutions, such as schools, churches, or even women's magazines, tell us that there are exceptions to these truisms. No one tells us that criminals and terrorists aren't the only bad people in the world. No one tells us that our neighbors, co-workers, or fellow church members, people who look just like us, may, in fact, be human predators. So when we run into these human predators, we are totally unprepared. We don't know about sociopaths, people who live their lives by exploiting others. Professionally, they may be diagnosed as antisocial, narcissistic, borderline, histrionic, or psychopathic. The official estimates for the number of people who have these personality disorders average out to about 12% of the population. For this segment of the population, all those feel-good messages we get from society simply do not apply. These people are not the same as the rest of us. They do not want to be loved. Deep down, there is no good inside. But these facts are not integrated into how we perceive the world. We all have a certain Weltanschauung, which is a word borrowed from the German that means worldview. We have ideas and beliefs about how the world works, the nature of things, and the nature of people. After a lifetime of absorbing cultural messages such as "everyone deserves a second chance" and "love conquers all," these are the lenses through which we view the world. They are also the lenses through which we approach our relationships. But then the sociopath comes along. Here's why this betrayal is so devastating. It demolishes our worldview. It contradicts everything we thought we knew and understood about the world and the people in it. We learn, to our horror, that our worldview is not accurate. There is a certain percentage of the population, the sociopaths, for whom everything we thought we knew about humanity simply does not apply. This is why we feel so devastated. Not only our heart is broken, our understanding of life is broken. Along with emotional healing, therefore, recovery requires that we change our most fundamental beliefs. Yeah, for 88% of the population, everything we always thought remains true. But for the remaining 12%, we need to accept a new reality. And here it is. Sociopaths are totally different from the rest of us. They have no ability to love. They are motivated only by power and control. It's a brutal lesson, but now we know. We know that although the majority of people are good and loving, some people are not. Having been shattered by the sociopath, we learned this lesson the hard way. So there is a silver lining to this storm. Now we can approach the rest of our lives with the wisdom of a survivor. That's the presentation for tonight. Next, I'll answer your questions. If you ever want in-depth advice about your own situation, I do offer personal consultations and a new service for deep emotional release. There's a link in the description below this video window. And if you ever have a question, please be sure to subscribe so that you can participate in the chat and ask your question. When you subscribe, you'll automatically be notified about all my new videos. Plus, by subscribing, you'll boost the distribution of Lovefraud Live on YouTube, so you'll help to get the word out about all these 12% of the population of dangerous sociopaths who live among us. Okay, so Gerald says, this is excellent information. Can a version of this be taught somehow in the schools? I wish. I really, really wish. In fact, I have done several presentations to high school and college students. And I remember talking about this stuff and watching some of the kids whose eyes were like this big. I mean, they had absolutely no idea that people like this were out there. And the other thing that was interesting was that invariably, when I did these presentations, people came up afterwards, both students and teachers came up, and they already had their stories. They already had stories of being involved with someone who was disordered. Some were romantic partners, but others were family members or other individuals. So yeah, by the time kids are in high school, they're already seeing this stuff, because the disorders of antisocial personality disorder and psychopathy often are apparent by the time someone is 15 or 16 years old, sometimes younger, but certainly in high school, plenty of kids who have these disorders start to show the signs. And as I said, it's approximately 12% of the population. So I think that it's reasonable to assume that 12% of high school students in any particular school are starting to develop this personality disorder. So it is important for people to know this. It is important for young people to know it, because they will start coming across it. And I can tell you, gosh, I don't know how many people have said to me, why don't they teach this in high school? And it's like, yeah, why don't they? Even here, it's kind of interesting because in New Jersey, where I am, there's requirements that students in high school learn about safe dating and learn to avoid abusive dating. But even when it's required, I had a lot of trouble trying to get into the schools. And one of the reasons is that there are so many requirements. Students have to learn this, they have to learn this, they have to learn this, that there simply isn't any time left, for something else. But this is the type of information that absolutely can save lives. It can help people to recognize, even at a young age, when there's something wrong, when someone they are being abused, and that this person is engaging in behavior that is not good. So I do wish that there were opportunities to talk about it. But another thing is that, especially with college students, they have virtually no interest in this information. There was a year, oh gosh, when was it? 2012, maybe, something like that, when we went to several conferences for people who wanted to present programs to students and to college students, because college students, they often have a budget, a student activities budget, and there's kids who are in charge of the committees, and they get to spend the budget on whatever they want. Well, mostly what they want is comedians and bands, and there was very little interest in the type of information that I would present, which is something that could save their lives. So it was hard. It was really hard. Okay, so Katrina's talking about Professor Sam Vaknin, who is a real malignant narcissist, but a professor. He comes from the other side and says it's hard to heal because they regress us victims as if we were back to our childhood. Well, Sam Vaknin, I had a run-in with him too. He is a psychopath. And in all honesty, I'd be very hesitant to take to heart anything that he says. He's just interested in promoting himself. So it is important to understand and pay attention to who is presenting you with any information. I don't know. I would be very careful with his information. Okay, so Dancing Queen says, or asks, do they keep in touch with their exes? Well, the answer is sometimes yes and sometimes no. There are times when a sociopath who wants to break off a romantic partnership just decides, essentially gets up one morning and decides he's done or she's done. I mean, it can be that sudden and over no particular reason, and they leave and never look back. And of course, the other partner, who had no clue that anything was wrong, is like, what's going on? What happened? What did I do? And they could be gone. And there are times when they just simply disappear and you never hear from them again. And then there are those who perhaps were married to somebody and get a divorce, but still don't want their ex-wife or ex-husband to be out of their control. So they still want to maintain control over the ex, even though they've moved on and begun a new family with someone else. And then there are those who walk out, disappear, and then sometime 6 months, a year, 2-3 years later, all of a sudden turn up again and say, hey, how you doing? So the short answer is that sometimes they return and sometimes they don't. The key in this situation is for you to make up your mind, if this happens to you, that you will not take this person back. Okay? I mean, that has to be your decision, because they may show up again. And the reason that they'll show up again is that from their point of view, they were able to take advantage of you for a while, and then, maybe they'll let me take advantage of them again. I mean, they just figure that, they already got something going here that they can take advantage of you again. So that's why it's so important for it to be your decision, your commitment to yourself, that you are not going to allow this person back into your life. In fact, you might even want to spend a little bit of time planning that, if the person showed up at your door, or if you pick up the phone and it's a different number and you recognize the voice, or if they, contact you in any way, I mean, you want to rehearse what you're going to do. The correct thing to do is to slam down the phone and not talk to them, or totally ignore them, and or if they persist, to call the police. But you want to be prepared for that, because sometimes they do show up again. And if they do, your emotions may react in ways that you don't expect. I mean, your emotions may go back to how you enjoyed it so much in the beginning when the relationship was good and new. And so if you act on those emotions, you'll get to a place where you don't want to be. So you really need to be ready to react appropriately in your own best interest, which means to make sure that you don't let them in. Okay, so Gerald says, I taught high school for 40 years. You could use Shakespeare's villains to start out on a modern concept of sociopathy. They were enthralled by studying evil. Yeah, that's good. There are some characters in Shakespeare and other classical literature that could absolutely be models for this type of behavior. I remember quite a few years ago, my husband and I went to see Don Juan, the opera, and I was watching this story, and it was like, this guy's a complete sociopath. And, so maybe, a story like that is an opportunity to really to show how these people are, and as you point out, is a good starting point to talk about, what you might see in your own life. So yeah, so that would be terrific. Okay. All right, so Donna says, I'm confused about the sociopath I was with for 3 years. He was a pretty famous comedian. Doesn't that require an ability to connect and relate with the audience? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's authentic. It means that he has a good act. And a lot of sociopaths are really, really good actors. I mean, they appear to be authentic. They appear to have a heart. They appear to be loving and caring. But it's an act. And, these folks have been doing it their entire life. I mean, as I mentioned earlier on, that often, by the time people are in high school, even early high school, junior high, they're already engaging in this type of behavior. So they've been doing it as long as they can remember, and every day is a new rehearsal. Every day is a new opportunity to try out some of their tricks and see what happens. So, yeah, I mean, even though somebody is famous like that, it certainly does not mean that they can't also be disordered. So, hang on, I'm moving along here. MME says, no, Talon says, they can be charismatic with an audience and totally different one-on-one in private. Yes, that is absolutely true. And plenty of people have told me that, the way that they get treated behind closed doors is like totally different from the way this person is out in public. I mean, out in public, he's the perfect husband or she's the perfect wife, and everybody's jealous because you have this wonderful relationship, but you get home and shut the door and it's totally different. So yeah, that absolutely happens. Okay, so MME says, do they implode or plot revenge when they catch you with their secret life? Cheating and drugs. I don't know about implode. Explode is certainly a possibility. Once that they find out that you're onto them, it can stir up a hornet's nest. I mean, often a lot of people find that that's when the mask slips, as we say. Once they realize that you're onto it, that that they're not authentic, that something isn't real, then they stop trying. I mean, because for folks like this, for a sociopath, it's an effort to appear normal. It's like acting all day long, and so they just stop. In fact, that's one of the things that happens in many cases when they get older. I wrote my book called Senior Sociopaths, and essentially did a lot of research with Lovefraud readers and found that sociopaths don't get better as they get older, which is what the common perception is in the mental health field. They actually get worse. And one of the ways that many people described that they get worse is that they stop even pretending to care anymore. They stop even pretending to keep up the image, and they let their actual cruel self be there for all to see, or at least for the family to see, since again they can put on an act out in public, but especially with their family, they just don't even bother anymore. Okay, so Christine says, at what age do they start showing their true colors, sociopathic behavior? Again, it can be around puberty. First of all, as I've explained before, this disorder, psychopathy and antisocial personality disorder, are highly genetic. And so what that means is that somebody is born with a predisposition to the disease condition, and then whether or not it actually comes to fruition depends on the environment that they grow up in, the type of parenting they get, and all those environmental factors. So it's a combination of nature and nurture. If they have inherited the disorder, sometimes the behaviors can start to be seen when they're very young. I mean, I've heard people talk about 3 and 4-year-olds who are lying and stealing, but typically it definitely kicks in with puberty. So whenever that happens, 12, 13, 14, 15, that's when you may start to see these kinds of behaviors. Although in some people it's later, but typically you start to see something around that age. So Gerard says, some of the worst sociopaths in my experience have been priests and pastors, wolves in sheep's clothing. Absolutely, that's true. In fact, I've done multiple surveys of Lovefraud readers. Oh gosh, how many? 7 or 8 surveys. And I typically have many of the same questions in the surveys. And one of the questions that I've asked repeatedly is that, did the person you're describing, whoever the sociopath is that they're describing, and it could be a romantic partner, a family member, someone, a work colleague, it's just someone they know. So the question is, did they make claims about their life that turned out to be false? And I have a bunch of options: military, law enforcement. And one of the things that I ask is, did they claim to be clergy, born again, or Christian? Well, that's like the biggest category. about 20% of the survey respondents said that the person they know falsely claimed to be born again, Christian, spiritual, some kind of guru, or a pastor or priest. So it's a big part of the scam. And the reason is because, well, people who are disordered, who go into the clergy, they kind of look at it as a good scam, because they get to put on the collar, and then they have all these people who are believing them, and it's a good way to be a parasite. You get a church, it's tax exempt, you have all these people giving you money, and all you got to do is stand up there and be charismatic and talk, which many of them are very good at. So yeah, that can definitely, there are plenty of disordered individuals who are members of the clergy, and I've had plenty of people tell me their experiences with these people. So yeah, there's lots of them. So Katrina says they appear to be everything you ever wanted, and that's because you tell them what you... Yeah, and yeah, that's exactly what happens. Denise says, thank you. Well, you're very welcome, Denise. I'm glad Lovefraud has helped you. Okay, so Lisa says, it's been over 20 years since my relationship with a sociopath, and feel I've recovered. But once in a while, I have a nightmare that I'm tracked back in the relationship. What might this be? Actually, I know nightmares are no fun, but it's probably a good thing, because my guess is that it's your subconscious bringing up and then releasing more remnants of the emotional trauma that you went through with this person. That's actually one of the ways that we recover and that we release negative energy, is by dreams. So it means that something is coming to the surface and kind of into your awareness with the dream, but it's probably actually a step in your recovery. So it's no fun, but it's probably not a bad thing. It probably means that just more of the emotional pain is being released. So Mimi says, I think they study people and learn lies that work best to hook the innocent. And yeah, that's true. That's what they do. They as I said, they've been doing this their entire life, and they learn. They learn what works and what doesn't work, and then they just get better and better at it, and they keep doing what works. So, okay, everybody, that appears to be the end of the questions for this evening. So thank you very much, and please join me next Tuesday for the next episode of Lovefraud Live. Thank you.